Morning,
Morning.
everybody. Yeah, sorry, Chair. Thank you.
No problem whatsoever. So is it, with everybody's permission, shall I now get this meeting open and up and running, Joanne?
Yeah, I think you're good to start, Chair.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this live streamed meeting of the Budget Scrutiny Committee at Bolsover District Council. This is a public meeting being streamed live to YouTube and via the council's website. If for any reason the public can no longer hear or see the meeting over the live stream, we will adjourn the meeting until the connection has been re-established. This meeting is also being recorded. Can the facilitator confirm who is in remote attendance at this meeting? Tom, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll just do we have a number of members and officers in remote attendance at the meeting. I'll just do a roll call of the members that we have in remote attendance. I'll say each member's name, who's here remotely, and if each member could please say their title, say which ward they represent, and confirm that you can see and hear me okay. Thank you. Okay, I'll start with Councillor Jen Wilson.
Yeah, Councillor Jen Wilson, Shirebrook South, representing Bolsover District Council.
Councillor Mary Dooley, portfolio holder.
Yeah, I can hear you. Councillor Mary Dooley, representing Pinkston Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Bailey.
Councillor Alan Bailey, representing Clown East, and I can see and hear you. All right, thank you.
Councillor Derek Adams.
Councillor Derek Adams, Bolsover South, I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Councillor Janet Tate.
Councillor Janet Tate, representing Shirebrook South, and I can see and hear everybody.
Councillor Anne Clark.
Councillor Anne Clark, East Ward, and yes, I can hear and see everyone.
Councillor David Dixon.
Yeah, Councillor David Dixon, Barber Ward. I can see and hear everybody.
Councillor Dexter Bullock.
Yeah, Councillor Dexter Bullock, Blackwell Parish. I can see and hear everybody. Thank you.
Councillor Jane Bryson.
Councillor Jane Bryson, South Normanton West Ward. I can see and hear everything okay.
Councillor Jim Clifton.
Councillor Jim Clifton, Elmpton with Cresswell. Video and sound okay, thank you.
Councillor Andrew Josbury.
Andrew Josbury, South Normanton East, loud and clear, mate.
Thank you. Councillor Yvonne Parkin.
Councillor Yvonne Parkin, South Normanton West, and I can see and hear everybody. Thank you.
Councillor Peter Roberts.
Councillor Peter Roberts, Whitwell Ward. I can see and hear everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Cooper.
Councillor Paul Cooper, Bolsover North and Shuttlewood, and I can hear and see everybody. Thank you.
Councillor Tom Munro.
Councillor Tom Munro, Whitwell Ward, I can see and hear everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rose Bowler.
Councillor Rose Bowler, Bolsover South Ward. Yes, I can see and hear okay.
Thank you. Councillor Ray Heffer.
Yeah, Councillor Ray Heffer can hear and see everyone. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Parkin.
Councillor Parkin, you're on mute.
Councillor Graham Parkin, South Normanton West. I can hear and see everybody.
Thank you.
Sorry about the delay.
No problem. Okay. Councillor Maxine Dixon.
Councillor Maxine Dixon, Barbara Ward. I can see and hear everyone.
Thank you. Councillor Rita Turner.
Councillor Turner, you're on mute. There we go, you can hear you now.
Okay.
Can you see and hear us okay,
Oh,
Councillor
sorry.
Turner?
Right. Councillor Turner representing Elton, Cresswell and Hobthorpe Ward. I can see and hear everyone.
Thank you. Councillor Natalie Hoy.
Councillor Natalie Hoy representing Clown East, and yes, I can see and hear everybody.
Councillor Tricia Clough.
Councillor Tricia Clough representing Old Hucknall Ward. Yes, I can see and hear everybody. Thank you, Tom.
And in addition to the members we have in attendance, we also have from governance, myself, Tom Scott, and Amy Bryan, Scrutiny and Elections Officer Joanne Wilson, and Section 151 Officer Teresa Fletcher, and Claire Bamford, the Senior Accountant from Finance, has joined us as well. And now I'll hand back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Chair.
If I can just come in, Chair.
Yeah.
Chair, Tom's not mentioned my name, so don't you want me here? Can I go?
Oh, apologies, councillors. Yeah, we've also Councillor Clive Moseby, portfolio holder.
Yeah, I'm representing Blackthorn. Thank you. I can hear and see you.
Thank you. And Councillor Chris Kane.
Yeah, Councillor Chris Kane, Sharbrook North Ward, and I can see and hear everything.
Thank you.
And also Councillor David Down, Shybrook South. I can see and hear everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Have I missed anybody else off? No, I think that's everybody, Chair. Thank you. I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Tom, for that, and thank you everybody for making sure that we've got you listed as being here. Item 2 is any urgent items of business. I've got none. Has Joanne or any of the officers got anything you want to come in on? I take that as a no. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair. I think you've skipped over the meeting etiquette and.
Oh yes, I've got onto the agenda. I do apologise. It's the tender is in my left hand. Right. Tom, is this where you're coming in now to tell us who's present at the meeting?
Well, I've done that now, Chair. So I'll just go toward the procedures and the etiquette, if you don't mind, Chair.
Yeah. Well, thank you for explaining that to us. And now you're going to explain some of the procedures of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Before we start the meeting, members are reminded of the meeting etiquette that's been circulated to them. All members should have their microphones off during the meeting unless you wish to speak and you have been called on. Members attending remotely, please leave your cameras on during the meeting. For remote members to request to speak, please use the chat function in Zoom to type speak or raise your hand on camera. The chair will then call on you to speak during the discussion debate. When a vote is to be taken, this will be by a show of hands. For those attending remotely, please ensure your hand is visible on camera. If any member is disconnected from the meeting, please try to rejoin as quickly as possible. If you have any technical difficulties, please contact one of the support officers assigned to this meeting in the email we sent to you. If you're about to speak, the meeting will wait a few moments for you to rejoin. Chair, I will now hand back to you to start the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now begin the agenda. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Could the clerk confirm if we have received any apologies for today? Bring forward anybody who's given them their apologies. Thank you then. Do members have any other apologies to note? Tom confirms to the chair that these have been noted. Is this correct, Tom?
Yes,
Then-
Chair. Nobody's indicating, so I'll note that in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, any urgent items? I have not been advised of any urgent items for today's meeting. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest members wish to make? Could I
Chair,
ask?
Chair,
yes.
Councillor Graham Parkin's indicating he wants to speak.
Great. Would you like to come in, Councillor Parkin?
Councillor Graham Parkin from West South Normanton. I just need to let people know that there's during the book of for today, there's a mention of Lloyds Bank, and I have got some shares in Lloyds Bank. Not a lot, I'll tell you, but I have got a few shares in Lloyds Bank, so I'm declaring that as an interest if necessary.
Right. Thank you for that, Graham. It will have been
I'll
noted.
note that in the minutes, Councillor Parkin. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations of interest?
Councillor Hoy is indicating, Chair.
Right. Could you like to come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to declare, because I've not had a chance to update my paperwork yet, that I'm no longer employed within the Bolsover area by a company. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll note that, Councillor Hoy. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to item 4 now then, please. Within the agenda pack, starting on page 4, we have the minutes from the 26th of November 2024 approval. I'd like to move these as a true and accurate record of the meeting. Could I please have a seconder?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you, Rose. Could we all vote on this, please? Could I have a show of hands, please? For all in favour?
That's all in favour, Chair.
Thank you for that. Item 5, medium-term financial plan. We will now move to item 5, the medium-term financial plan for the next 4 years. This is to be found on page 12 of the agenda pack. We have the head of finance and resources and the section 151 officer present alongside the portfolio holder for finance. Could I ask the chief officer to brief members on the report, please? Thank you, Teresa.
Chair, I'll just wait for the presentation to put on the screen.
Thank you.
Is this the medium-term financial plan presentation?
That's right, Tom.
Just give me a sec.
I'll just give you a bit of an introduction while he's putting the presentation on. This report went to exec on Monday, and it goes to council next Wednesday. So any questions or points you want to make, we can take to the meeting and give them verbally. This report covers the finances of the council for the next 4 years, starting 1st of April. During November 20, I presented the revised budget for 2021. Those figures are included in this report for completeness, but they've not changed since that time. Can you change to the next slide, Tom, please? The report includes revenue and capital expenditure, which I'll give you a definition of on the next slide. General fund and housing revenue expenditure and income is included, and I'll explain the difference between those on another slide. The report discusses council tax implications and HRA dwelling rents and details the capital programme. I've listed the appendices here so you can see where to look for each bit. Next slide. The revenue budget is the amount spent on the day-to-day running of the council services. This includes salaries, property and transport running costs, and payments to suppliers for goods and services. It also includes the borrowing costs of money spent on capital assets. Capital spending is mainly for buying, constructing or improving physical assets such as buildings, land, vehicles, plant or equipment. As a council, we have a capital de minimis limit of £10,000. That means anything below that level is automatically classed as revenue. What's the HRA? Next slide. The HRA stands for Housing Revenue Account, as I'm sure you know. Because we have more than 50 properties, we must maintain a separate account containing all the income and expenditure relating to our housing stock. There's no discretion. We must have a HRA and we must abide by legislation. This is a ring-fenced account and must be kept totally separate from general fund. Housing dwelling rents provide the income for the HRA, and the main costs are repair and maintenance of properties, plus the interest and debt repayments relating to capital. The separation of HRA and general fund applies to capital expenditure as well as revenue, and this is the reason we also split the capital programme. So what's general fund? Well, general fund is anything that isn't housing, sorry. The largest sources of income are business rates and council tax. We also get income from fees and charges, but this is much, much less. We're still getting a tiny bit of government grant, but how much longer we'll get this is not known. The main cost to general fund is salaries at about £10 million a year. As I've said, there's no cross-subsidisation allowed. The two funds of HRA and general fund must be kept completely separate. On to the budgets. This table shows the position of the general fund for each of the next 4 years. After undertaking the budget process, we have a budget shortfall in each year, as you can see from the top line. However, budget changes are likely to happen while we're in those years, so we've estimated possible savings to reduce the shortfall. We always have some vacancy saving. This is really the recruitment drag when posts are vacant between someone leaving the council and a new person starting. As an estimate for budgeting, we've included a council tax increase for future years. Obviously, the percentage is subject to change, depends on the referendum limits in that year. We put funds on one side in 1920 to pay for the expected increase in pension fund costs. The increase was exactly as we predicted at 1% each year. That will be funded from the 1920 surplus. If the actuals for these 3 years match the estimates, we'll have a zero budget gap like it says on the bottom line. And I'll explain why that is on the next slide. But for 24-25, that figure at the bottom, we're going to have that budget gap. Next slide, please. Government funding, we were expecting the Government Spending Review 2019 to cover 2021 to 22-23. We were expecting further reductions in the end of New Homes Bonus, major changes to business rates, the end of the Revenue Support Grant, and the results of the Fair Funding Review. This was all going to be bad news for us, and instead we got a rollover of 1920's figures plus inflation where appropriate. So then we waited for the spending review for 2020, but coronavirus happened, so understandably the review was delayed, and again we got another rollover year. This means we'll get all of the above for 1 more year, so financially it's a good thing for us that it's been rolled over. From 22-23 onwards, however, we revert back to the previous assumptions, whereas a district were hit by reductions in all of the above funding streams, and we're still waiting for the results of the Fair Funding Review, or whatever takes its place. It's been muted that might change into something else now. Either way, something's going to change. It's all going to change. Next slide. The way the business rate system works means we have to prepare the budget figures before we know the income for the year, so we always have to estimate it. In the years where we achieve more than we estimated, we put the excess into this NNDR Growth Protection Reserve. We've been saving up to finance the council in the years when we didn't achieve the growth. Recently, we've put other government funding into the reserve, such as some of the extra for 21-22, because we're pretty sure our business rates growth, which we get quite a lot of, is going to be wiped out under the new regime. This reserve is why we have a zero budget gap in each of the next 3 years. It's being returned to the general fund and used to smooth out the losses in government funding, but it won't last forever. It runs out in 24-25 actually, and that's why we still have a gap in the final year of that 1.6 million. This is where we look to the transformation plan and the new Directorate for Development to generate income and replace the funding we've lost before we run out of money we've put on one side in 24-25. Where we make transformation or any other savings, we'll use less of the reserve than we've currently planned to do, so we'll try and eke it out a bit further. Next slide, on to coronavirus. The assumption made in the medium-term financial plan for coronavirus is that for 21-22, cost pressures and losses in leisure income will be covered by the government. The scheme to fund 75% of irrecoverable council tax and business rates losses was announced in the spending review. This and the spreading of the collection fund deficits over 3 years should mean there's no detrimental impact on the MTFP from coronavirus. Next slide. Council tax. The referendum limits for 21-22 are the same as for last year, as we're still being limited by the government in the amount of council tax we can achieve. We're limited to the greater of 2% or £5. The level of increase each year affects the base for future years, and the proposed increase of 21-22 is 2.75%, which is £4.99 at a band D. Onto the HRA. This shows the position of the HRA over the 4 years. Within the expenditure line, we have the repair and maintenance and supervision and management of the properties, which amount to over £12 million each year. Also included is the interest and debt payment of around £3 million each year. By far, the main source of income is from properties. Housing rents is 20.8 million in 21-22, rising to 21.7 million by 24-25. Accounting regulations mean we have to charge a level of depreciation on our stock each year. This is used to fund some of the capital work on the council's housing stock. You can see that income is larger than expenditure at net cost of service level, so the net cost of service figure is actually an income figure, which is then reduced by the cost of the depreciation. Transfers to reserves are also a cost and are to fund further future capital work within the HRA programme. Each year we're estimating a small surplus, and this will be put into the HRA revenue reserve. Onto the rents. In October 2017, government announced a long-term rent deal for local authority landlords. After 4 years of a 1% cut each year, we're now allowed an annual increase to our rents of CPI plus 1%. Therefore, for 21-22, the increase is 1.5%. And we've assumed this same increase as an estimate for all years of the plan. The next slide will put this into context for dwellings for you. Where fees and charges have been increased, they've also been increased by 1.5% in most cases. Heating charges have not been increased due to the changes made through the Capital Safe and Warm scheme. Savings have been made in our costs, so we're passing those on to residents again. Proposed dwelling rents then. What do the rent increases mean per property? A large proportion of our dwellings are let for social rent. Out of 5,000 properties, 4,850 roughly are social properties, and about 150 are let at an affordable rent. Affordable rent is charged on our new build properties and is calculated as 80% of market rent. The average new rent charge for a social property will be £86.42p, which is included in the table. Obviously, this covers a raft of different property types and sizes. The average new rent chargeable for an affordable property will be £107.71, which is obviously higher than social, as it's closer to the market rent. And the annual and weekly increases are £70.56 and £1.47 respectively, and the range of rents is again in that table. General Fund Capital Programme. This table shows a summary of the General Fund Capital Programme. It's fully funded without any new borrowing over the life of the programme, and a breakdown of each of the schemes are in Appendix 4 if you wanted the detail on them. Onto the HRA one. Again, this is also fully funded. A breakdown of the schemes is shown in Appendix 4. The schemes for both General Fund and Capital, which are in the programme for 2021, if they're not spent, will be added to the 21-22 capital programme when we've completed final accounts in June. And I'll bring those to you when I bring the outturn report, probably June or July. And that's it. So I'm happy to take any questions anybody's got.
Thank you for that report, Teresa. And Joanne, are there any members acknowledging they want to speak and ask questions?
Councillor Mosby is indicating.
Right, would you like to come in, Councillor Mosby, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I'm here for a purpose, and I think the purpose is to re-emphasise what Teresa's presented to us this morning. And I must thank her for putting that slide programme together, because I think it hopefully does bring it a bit clearer to members and gives them maybe a bit more of an understanding as to what it's about. But I would just like to run through one or two things within the report before you on this agenda item 5. Obviously, as Teresa's put through to you, for the General Fund Housing Revenue Account and Capital Programme, And all these different accounts are listed under appendixes 1 through to number 4. I'll move on to general fund. I'm going to be pretty brief on this because Sensei Teresa's done a good job, but we move on to page 13 under the general fund, and I'm going to bring to your attention 1.6 within that section there. And I'm going to read it out to you because I think it's important that we do get this message across to members because you're the ones that's the decision makers in these things. And I think without the relevant facts, you may not make the right decisions, or could be slightly biased. Anyway, it's agreed that within that 1.6, the any surpluses on the council's 2 main revenue accounts be transferred to reserves in preparation for future expenditure. The reason we've started doing reasonably well at present, when we look at the table on the top of page 14, is because over the years we have been prudent and we have put into reserves monies, which has then helped us within that table to balance the budgets from the years 2021 through to 23-24. You can see at the top line, in the ones in bold, we're actually in deficit until we start putting some of those other savings within there. And as Teresa said, the NNDR Growth Protection Reserve is the monies that we're using in there to try and make sure that the budgets are balanced up to 23-24. However, the tail or the picture changes when we look to 24-25, and you can see in there in the bold bottom line the shortfall of £1.5 million within that budget at that time, whilst the other 4 are balancing or at this time are balancing. But that can vary, that can alter, things can change that, and it could mean we haven't got balanced budgets and we've got to find money from somewhere else. We've got a relative amount of certainty that in 24-25 we are going to find £1.5 million to produce a balanced budget, which is a legal requirement on the council to be able to do that. And that's why I referred to that 1.6 on the previous page. We need to be ensuring that when monies or income or savings that we make are put back into reserves, so we can have a smooth transition in that 24-25 and future years without having to take radical steps to balance a budget, which is not good financial management at the end of the day. There should have been a spending review, but obviously, the government's had to put that back due to the COVID and the pressures on there. So the settlement we've got for this first year is just a 1-year one in it all. But we do know, if you look under 1.5, and we do know that such things as new homes bonus, we've had a bit of a bonus this year, we've got it, but it will be gone next year. And when we move across to page 15 and looking at 1.25, the revenue support grant, the RSG, we've had again a bit of a bonus this year, and we have got some money coming in for that. But there again, that will be gone next year in it all. So we are losing some revenue income streams, and we're not quite sure if there is anything going to be there to replace them. So where we are balancing the budgets, it is all quite a lot of assumptions in there at this stage. And, we will be working closely with Office just to ensure any variations are brought to members as soon as we can pick up on them. When we move into page 16 at 1.31, this is the coronavirus pandemic within it all. And you can see from that the government did actually give us £1.5 million in 4 tranche payments. So that sort of helped us to cover the costs that we've incurred, and that's what that money's for, to cover the costs of the pandemic. And also we've been able to, the revenue, and we mentioned leisure centres, and we've lost money from them. But again, it says within that paragraph, we have been able to recoup some of that income through the income compensation scheme. It don't recover everything, but any shortfalls we've got in there should be able to be met by the surplus within the coronavirus money that we've got through. A bit of good news is in 1.32, and if you're on a parish council, you'll already know this, but we did manage to put best part of £500,000 back out to parish councils maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago now, to help them get through situations, because they couldn't claim any of this income compensation scheme money, through your parish halls and whatever closed in it all. So hopefully that's helped them out and helped them to set a realistic settlement for their expenditure in the coming year. 1.38 on page 17, it shows us major assumptions as to regards some of the costs that we're going to be incurring within this coming financial year. And I'm not going to run through them all, but there's 7 bullet points there, and obviously staffing and salaries and that sort of thing, and investment from obviously bank rates are so low, so we don't get a great deal of investment income now from that sort of thing. There's some money coming in from planning fees, extra money. hopefully we have got to spend that back into planning so that we can keep that going and ticking along. So we have took into account there some of the expenses coming our way. Obviously, we set the council tax, and I think we'll be doing that in February council meet. I think it's that anyway. But under 1.43, there's a table there which Teresa's gone through, showing the 2.75% increase gives us an annual increase of 4.99 on properties. So that's what we're looking for, and it gives us that extra nearly £110,000 back in revenue, which goes obviously into base budgets, which helps us all. 1.45, looking at general fund reserves, we do have to be sure, and the council has to be sure, that we have got sufficient and acceptable working fund balance. It is at 2.261 million at this particular stage, but we do need to have to keep us eye on that. And there is the roughly 1.5 million within the transformation fund, and as I'm sure you're all aware, this transformation fund is money to be used in order to do things differently or to generate income, or save money and generate income. So it's for new ideas, doing things in different ways to try and bring monies into the authority, or at least make sure we don't spend too much. Rent levels again at 1.46, and the tables listed again on 1.53 on page 18 and 19. We have to increase these by what the government say, and that's where we are in it all. And as you can see, whether it be a social rent or an affordable rent, we're going. And again, Teresa's put this eloquently, it's £1.16 a weekly increase one, and £1.47 for the others with it, or slight increase, but hopefully that's not going to be too unbearable for some people. When we look at the HRA financial reserves at 1.56, you can see it's got a working balance of just over 2 million within there. And this is what has to be used, as we said, on HRA stock and whatever. There are other reserves, there's new build reserves, vehicle repair reserves, renewal reserves, and development reserves. So that's looking quite sound at this stage. But then again, we do have to keep an eye on that as well. Over the page, at page 20, on the capital programme at 1.558, we approved members approved in February 2020 the capital programme in respect to years 2021 through to 23-24. And that's where we are at present. Obviously, I think we're all aware, and we all know that capital schemes can slip for various reasons. So there will be some moving about backwards and forwards with it all. But that's the normal sort of procedure. So we miss out this year, carries forward into next year, that sort of thing to get it done. When we move on to Street Council, section 151 officer is required to comment on the robustness of the estimates made and the adequacy of financial reserves there. But there again, it's in the dark and we're just making assumptions out. So these can alter. And it's, we will bring any issues back if things start to alter to members, so they've got a clear picture of where we're going. But at this stage, at this point in time, we're pretty much okay on it. I think that's my last bit of it is a bit of a summary. Thanks for bearing with me and being patient, but I do think I do have to stress, the importance of where we are. We have to be on things. So I do reiterate again some points I've made through going through this report, that any surpluses that we do get do go back into reserves. They're not there to fund a fancy scheme that we'd all like to do, and I'm sure we'd all hold his hand up with money with no problem. But we need to make sure that we do keep producing balanced budgets over this medium-term programme and longer, so we don't have to make any knee-jerk reactions to balance the budget. We need those reserves that we've used in the past, now using that for the future. So all surpluses, I would say, must go back into reserves. And I will say this as well, that any new spend that any department wants to make for whatever reason should be funded through either increased revenue to cover that cost, so it's a net zero cost to the council at all, or it's got to be met within existing budgets. We can't keep giving money out to increase budgets to do schemes that aren't being funded. So we have to make sure that it's either increased money coming in to cover it. If there's any new spend, it must be funded through increased revenue income, and it also, if that's not the case, it must be met through use existing budgets. and it all has to be fully funded. Otherwise, the medium-term plan goes out because we only want a few £100,000 being spent on things that's not fully funded, and those calculations go out the window in it all. And we all know what the result of that is. If we ain't got the money and we've used the reserves to try and keep it top up, there's only services and jobs that can go to cover that. So I do look to the new director to development to get some monies in. This is what it was set up for at end day, to bring some revenue monies in within it all. And we looked at that transformation pot, that nearly £1.5 million I mentioned earlier, to bring some new and innovative ideas into the council, to bring money in or to save us money. I hope I've not been too downbeat, but I do think it's important that members understand where we are, what we're doing. From my point of view, I'm not an accountant, I'm just a councillor trying to look after and make sure that we keep delivering services by Bolsover District Council to the people that we all represent, and making sure we've got the monies in place to do that, and we're meeting all financial regulations. So, that's me. Thanks for putting up with me. I hope you don't mind me going on, but I do need to make these points to everybody. And there again, I'm sure both Teresa and I will take any questions you might have, either on the report or the comments that we both made. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Clive. You've said exactly what I wanted to say about your report, which is wonderful, and that's good. Tom, do any members wish to ask any questions?
Councillor Janet Tate is indicating.
Right, Janet, Councillor Tate, would you like to come in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Clive and Teresa. That's really helpful, explained in plain English so everybody can understand it. But I've just got one question, and I hope it doesn't sound a silly question. The 36 million that we've put to one side to build council houses in the future, the overall income for HRH, does that include potential rent income from these new properties that are going to be coming on stream, or is that something that will be built in when they're built and the income is actually there?
No, it doesn't include it yet, so that'll be extra. When we can't build it in until we know that they're built.
Right.
We have to have a firm idea. So yes, that will be extra.
Right, great. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that.
Okay.
Tom, is there anybody else wishing to speak and ask any questions?
I can't see anyone else indicating, Chair.
Right. Well, then, I would like to move that we note the recommendation at point 6 on page 22 of the agenda pack, along with the proposed recommendations to put to executive. Can I have a seconder, please?
Seconded, Councillor Ray Heffer, Jen.
Thank you. Could I have a vote of show of hands on that, please, from members?
That looks to be everyone voting in favour, Chair.
Right, thank you for that. So that's carried. Item 6 now, the Treasury Strategy Report. We will now consider item 6, the revised Treasury Strategy Reports for the next 4 years. The covering report and appendices can be found on page 37 of your papers. We have the principal accountant to brief us on these reports. If I could invite Claire to begin, please.
Thanks, Chair. Tom, could I have the strategy report presentation up, please? Thank you. You can move straight to the next slide, please, Tom. Thanks. Treasury risk management at the authority is conducted within the framework of SIPFA's Treasury Management in the Public Service Code of Practice 2017, which is also known as the SIPFA Code. This requires the authority to approve a treasury management strategy before the start of each financial year. In the past, we have had a treasury management strategy that contained information on the capital expenditure and financing, minimum revenue provision policy, and details on investments and loans. but since 2019-20, we've had to produce 3 separate strategies. In February, the Treasury Management Strategy, the Investment Strategy, and the Capital Strategy will all be reported to Council for approval. They are here today for you to consider and pass any of your comments on to Council. Next slide, please. We start with the Treasury Management Strategy. As the slide says, it's Appendix 1. Treasury management is the management of the authority's cash flows, borrowing and investments, and their associated risks. The authority has borrowed and invested substantial sums of money and is therefore exposed to financial risks, including loss of invested funds and the revenue effect of the changing in interest rates. The successful identification, monitoring, and control of financial risk are therefore central to the authority's prudent financial management. Next slide, please. Because the strategy is very wordy, I thought it might be helpful if I summarise for you what it contains. From 1.6 to 1.22, the strategy is setting the external and local context for the reader. 1.23 to 1.35 is the borrowing strategy to be approved by members. This includes the approved sources of long-term and short-term borrowing at 1.29. 1.36 to 1.58 is the Treasury Management Investment Strategy to be approved by members. This includes the approved investment counterparties and limits at 1.42 onwards. 1.59 to 1.64 are the Treasury Management Indicators to be approved by members. These include Interest Rate Exposure Risk Indicator, Refinancing Rate Risk Indicator, Price Risk Indicator. 1.65 onwards gives a bit of extra information about derivatives and other related matters. Next slide, please. Moving on to the capital strategy, which is Appendix 2. The capital strategy was introduced by the 2017 edition of the Prudential Code and is intended to give a high-level overview to elected members of how capital expenditure, capital financing, and treasury management activities contribute to the provision of local authority services, along with an overview of how associated risk is managed. As already mentioned in the medium-term financial plan slides, capital expenditure is where the council spends money on assets, such as property or vehicles, that will be used for more than 1 year. Assets below £10,000 are not capitalised and are therefore charged to revenue in year. Next slide, please. Capital financing is also included in the strategy. This is how we pay for the capital expenditure. We used to get government grants to pay for capital years ago, but that doesn't happen so much now. We tend to get specific grants, such as the Heritage Lottery Fund for renovating properties in one of our conservation areas. We can use our own resources if they are available, such as reserves or receipts from selling capital assets, such as houses or land. If nothing else is available, we use borrowing and debt financing, but this can have a significant revenue costs, and we have to make sure we can afford these revenue implications as part of evaluating any capital scheme. Next slide, please. The Public Works Loan Board, known as the PWLB, recently brought in new lending terms from the 26th of November 2020. These terms aim to prevent councils using PWLB loans to buy investment assets primary for yield. Councils can still borrow for service delivery, housing and regeneration purposes. The council will have to complete an annual return to the PWLB setting out its plans, and this has to be signed by the Section 151 officer, which is Teresa. The council will probably need to access PWLB funding in the coming years to finance projects such as Bolsover Homes, and therefore intends to avoid purchasing any investment assets primary for yield so that they are able to continue to access PWLB funding in future for such schemes. Next slide, please. We're not currently going to use debt to finance our general fund capital programme in any of the years of the medium-term financial plan. Therefore, I've put this slide in for information, but I'm not going to go through it in detail as it's not relevant for the particular period of the medium-term financial plan that we're discussing. Next slide, please. Again, I thought it might help if I summarise the contents of the capital strategy. Table 1 is a summary of capital expenditure plans up to 24-25, and the detail for all years is in Appendix 2A. Table 2 is a summary of how the capital expenditure will be financed, and again, more detail is in the Appendix 2A. Table 3 at 1.13 has the revenue budget implications for our existing debt. As I've already mentioned, we won't have any new general fund debt over the life of the medium-term financial plan. Table 4 at 1.14 is the estimated capital financing requirement to 24-25. This is the historic debt outstanding that we've had from previous purchase of assets. The minimum revenue provision statement and our levels of debt are at Appendix B. This is the cost to revenue, i.e. the interest and debt charges for the general fund. All of these tables need to be approved by members, plus the indicators at tables 6, 8 and 10. Next slide, please. Finally, we have the corporate investment strategy at Appendix 3. Introduced by the 2018 edition of the Local Government Guidance on Government Investments, the guidance was quickly updated because the government were getting very nervous about the areas of some local authorities were entering into with their commercial investments and to try and compensate for their losses of government grant funding. The investment strategy focuses on the investments made for service purposes and commercial reasons rather than those for treasury management. Next slide, please. A summary of the contents of the investment strategy is 1.10 to 1.18, details of the loans and shares for service purposes. 1.19 to 1.23 is the property we hold for investment purposes. Included within these sections is the Council's approach to risk when entering into this type of investments. At 1.24 is the detail of our loan commitments. At 1.30 to 1.33 are the investment indicators. Next slide, please. This slide is extra information on commercial investments. Commercial investments are where earning investment income is the main purpose of the investment. The commercial investments we hold are Plesley Vale Industrial Units and the Tangent Units at Shirebrook. Next slide, please. Service investments are those to support local public services by lending money to or buying shares from another. For example, we may give a loan to a parish council who are undertaking a large building project to help with cash flow until external monies are received. The council invests in the shares of Dragonfly Development Limited to support local public services and to stimulate local economic growth by delivering housing and commercial developments while generating income for the council. Any questions?
Joanne, is there anybody indicating they want to ask any questions?
I can't see anyone indicating, Chair.
Right then, at this point then, I'd like to thank Claire for a report and the new information that she's given us and the updates. It's keeping us all well and truly updated where we are and what we're doing. So I'd like to thank you for that. And could I'll propose that we accept it. And could I have a seconder, please?
Seconded, Councillor Ray Hefford, Jen.
Thank you. All in favour, could we have a show of hands, please?
That looks to be almost everyone in favour, Chair.
Right, thank you for that. And thank you again, Claire. And we'll be moving on to the next item next, please.
Chair, sorry, Councillor Mosby's indicating.
Oh, sorry, Clive, I didn't
Yeah,
see you.
it's all right. I just wanted you to get the vote of. I just really want to thank Claire for going through that at the end of the day. I mean, even I find that dry in lots of ways. So, I mean, it is difficult. It is nice to hear a different voice, shall we say, and see a different face presenting stuff instead of Teresa all the time. So I just wanted to put on record my thanks to Claire for what she's done and for making it a bit more interesting on the dry subject. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clive. Right, are we moving now then, Joe, on to the next item, which is item 7? I hope. Or is it?
Yes, Chair, it's item 7.
7, right. Which you will find on starts on page 79. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So it's just to remind members of the work programme for the committee for this year. This is the final meeting of committee for the current municipal year, and we'll be looking to start working out our committee programme for the coming municipal year, which will hopefully involve some additional training for members along the way. We've got a further item on the end of this agenda with our usual briefing from Arlene Close. And I don't know if members have any particular suggestions for forthcoming work programme or any particular comments on the work programme for this year. I'm happy to take any questions.
I can't see anyone indicating, Chair.
No, and I can't on my screens either. So at that point then.
Sorry, Chair, Councillor Dooley is now indicating.
Yeah, if you'd like to come in, Councillor Dooley.
Thank you, Chair. Just at this minute, I'm going to leave the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming and attending the meeting for us.
Thank you.
I hope you'll stay well and safe.
Absolutely, everyone. Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Yes.
So it's just to move the recommendation, Chair, then.
Right. I'd like to I'll move the recommendation and could
Councillor Ray Hefford, seconded, Jen.
Thank you. Could I have a show of hands for all in favour?
Yeah, double.
That looks to be everyone in favour, Chair.
Right, thank you for that. Now, do we move, Joanne, to item 8?
Yes, Chair, it's item 8 now, just the updates from each of the chairs.
Right, thank you. Can I invite Rose if she'd like to start?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rose.
As Chair of the Customer Service and Transformation Scrutiny Committee, I'd like to give this following update. Since this committee last met, the Customer Services and Transformation Scrutiny Committee have held one public meeting, one informal meeting, and are due to have an informal meeting this week. Members considered the Q1, Q2 Customer Standards and Complaints Report from Anne Bedford, Q2 performance and the final post-scrutiny monitoring report on the review of delivery of environmental health. Members are continuing with their review of IT services and support and are due to hold the third meeting this week. Further work is taking place in relation to both of the reviews of the committee from 2019-20 on review of reletting of council properties and the review of new Bolsover due to the impact of COVID-19 on completion of works on site. We are currently liaising with the Customer Standards and Complaints Officer in relation to the review of new Bolsover due to current work with the Ombudsman. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bowler. Could I invite Councillor Downs to come in next, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Councillor David Downs, Scrutiny Chair for Health, Safe, Clean and Green Community Scrutiny. Since budget last met, our committee has held one formal meeting in December, including an informal meeting to consider our review work. Members considered Q2 performance, a monitoring update on the health and wellbeing strategy, and further detailed discussion on the impact of COVID-19 on the health and wellbeing and staff welfare. In the informal meeting, we discussed suggested topics for new reviews and agreed for 2 scopes to be produced. One in relation to the Council's policy on sky lanterns and helium balloons, and one in relation to the Council's policies on fireworks. As noted previously, our review from 2019-20 in relation to children in care and care leavers is still progressing, but has been affected by the pandemic, and we need to focus on the more immediate impact of COVID-19. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I've got the report from Growth Scrutiny. Since the last meeting of the Budget Scrutiny, the Growth Committee have held one formal meeting and 2 informal meetings. Members considered Q2 performance, further evidence in relation to their review of the relationship with Robert Woodhead Limited, and a briefing on the consultation draft of the proposed housing strategy. We have recently considered an initial draft of the new business growth strategy and are awaiting the final version within the next couple of months for financial scrutiny and submission to executive and the council. Within our informal meetings, we have been continuing to review work looking at the council's relationship with Robert Woodhead Limited and the schemes we are delivering jointly. We are now nearing the end of our evidence gathering for this work and are beginning to formulate recommendations. And that's the end of my report. Thank you. Joanne?
If members don't have any particular questions, Chair, that concludes that item. So it's just to move on with any scripts, page 8 of your script.
Right, thank you. That concludes item 8 and the public items of the meeting. We now need to move to our exempt section of the meeting, and I would like to move as outlined on the agenda that under section 1...
Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I do apologise. I think you've skipped the work programme item, Chair.
Is that on the agenda or on?
No, we've completed that, Chair. We've just done item 8 and we're now moving into exempt session.
Okay, my apologies, Chair.
No. So, Joanne, do I carry on reading where I was up to?
Yes.
That under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 92, as amended, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the stated part 1 of the schedule 12A of the Act, and it is not in the public interest for that to be revealed. I need a member to second this, please. Is anybody indicating to second it for me?
I'll second it for you, Jen, but can I also ask if I can leave because I've got an appointment in Ashbourne at 12 o'clock, madam?
Yeah, yes. Is everybody in agreement with Ray seconding this motion?
Jen?
Thank you. A show of hands.
Jen?
Yes.
Sorry, I just wanted just to know, it's just in case anybody says anything about the recording. It's 1972 Act. It's just to protect the council. That's all, Jen.
No. Thank you for doing that. That's good. So, is everybody in favour of what I've just recommended and got the count officers? Right, that's lovely. Ray, thank you for attending the meeting, and please drive safely and keep well, and all your family keep well while this epidemic's on.
Thank you, Jen.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah, Chair, I'll just confirm that Martin's ended the live stream before we continue to the last item.
Thank you.